Good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I'm Mary Kane alongside Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis. It's brought to you by our friends Exterior Home Solutions. If you need roofing, siding, windows, or a garage, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. They've been local and trusted since 1999. And you win a free roof from Exterior Home Solutions by nominating a deserving family at exteriorhomesolutions.com/makeover. That ends on October the 1st. All right, so we're a couple days out from Tennessee losing to Florida in the Swamp. Of course, you have UTSA coming up later in this week. It's going to be a big-time game to see if Tennessee can get back on track, work out some kinks before South Carolina and the rest of the SEC schedule gets here. Brent Hubbs, after Monday's press conference, feels like Josh Heupel knows there's a lot of self-inflicting wounds that Tennessee needs to correct, and you correct some of those, you'll be a whole lot better than you fared on Saturday.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that this team, and I know a lot of fans are looking for one specific, trying to find one specific thing. You know, what's the one fix? The reality is there's a lot of things to fix for this team. That doesn't mean your season's lost, Austin. It doesn't mean that it's over with and all those things. But it's what Josh Heupel was talking about. It is the little things they've got to get better. You can't have 10 penalties. Can't do it. You can't cost yourself 2 timeouts because your play clock's running down on the road. I mean, there's a million things like that has to improve. That's not what fans want to hear, Austin, because it makes you feel like your problems are much more magnified. But it's not a remove someone, plug someone in, and everything's fixed. And I think that's what everybody's got to understand.
Yeah, and most people, you see the target of most fans' frustration. They want quarterback change because that where it all starts and ends, right? I mean, they're ready to move on to Nico. The staff, you hear Josh Heupel talk on Monday. It's clear he's not going to do that. It feels like that Joe's decision making, where he was, out with his eyes, where he went with the football, was really, really good, except for the one forced throw when he got ear hold and threw the interception. And again, a bunch of little things equal one big thing. It's not just Joe. Joe's not perfect. Joe definitely deserves some criticism. He's the leader of the offense that scored 16 points and 30 points against a lowly Austin Peay team. So, but at the same time, like, they've got issues on the offensive line. Defensively, you got to tackle better. You got to be better in the front seven than they were the other night against Florida, where Etienne ran for a career high 170 plus yards, and they've got to get it figured out. And they got to do it in quick order. And if it starts this week with UTSA, an opponent that if you let hang around, could beat you in the fourth quarter. But if you go out and play the way you're capable of playing, you should win this football game.
Yeah, and Josh Heupel spoke really highly about UTSA, and we'll continue to break UTSA down as the week goes on. I will be clear, through 3 games, the numbers are not impressive with UTSA offensively. They didn't have their starting quarterback against Army. But again, we'll kind of get into that as the week goes on. Rob, I want to ask you about Joe Milton, but before I get to that, let's hear from Josh Heupel. This is from Monday. He was asked about the performance of Joe Milton. Obviously, that's what everybody wants to know. What does he think about Joe Milton? And on that interception, what would he have done in that situation? Here's Josh Heupel on his quarterback and Joe Milton.
Good things the other night. The pick, we can't just throw it up. You'd like to have that one back. Man, we got to be better in protection, too, in that situation. The decision-making, where he's going with the football, I said it before the game. I'll say it after the game, too. He was in the right spots. Accuracy, like wide receivers being exact in their routes, all those things got to continue to improve for us to be as efficient as we need to be.
Rob, AP and I, we were doing the post-game mini-pod, about an hour after the game was over with, and just sitting down there, and everything's raw and it's fresh on your mind, and I'm sitting here running through things that went wrong for Tennessee in that game, and I'm like, tackling, poor angling, horrible offensive line play, all that. Before I even got to Joe, and AP made the point, and I mean, I completely agree, and he's already said it today. At the end of the day, you're the quarterback of a team that scored 16 points on the road in SEC play. It's not good enough. What did you think about the offensive production and Joe Milton, his play, knowing it's got to get better, but also that there was a lot of things that went wrong?
Oh, I just didn't think he was the problem. I mean, was he great? Absolutely not. I mean, He's not the reason that Tennessee lost that game. I bet, any of us, if somebody would said, hey, Joe's going to throw for 290 yards, complete.
Look at that stud. Look at that stud right there.
60% of his.
Yeah, Jason Swain, there he is.
And hey, don't sleep on Glenn Thaxton back there too, Vol Network legend. in the frame. But I mean, if you would have known that Joe was going to throw for 290, complete 60%, have 2 touchdowns, and one really bad interception, I would have thought Tennessee was going to win that game, by a couple of scores. But, then you factor in, you average 3 yards a carry, the penalties, which, we've all talked about ad nauseum, which were just egregious. The missed tackling. I just, like you said, Eric, I mean, I think that's a good snapshot. You check a lot of boxes for why Tennessee lost in Gainesville before you get to number 7.
Well, here's the other thing, though, with Joe. There's 2 things here that I think fuel a lot of the 3 things that fuel the fans' conversation about this. One, Nico's a 5-star. Okay, number 1 player in the class according to On3. That's an immediate reaction from fans about how good he is. Whether he is or he's not, well, time will tell. So that's one thing. Second thing is Hendon Hooker was probably better than we even gave him credit for, and he got a lot of credit last year. Hendon Hooker righted a lot of wrongs with his ability to make plays off schedule, out in the perimeter with his legs, just righting wrongs. Hendon Hooker was really good. I won't say generational AP. That's probably a little much, but he in this offense was a perfect marriage and was unbelievable a year ago. You knew there'd be a drop off. Probably didn't realize just how good Hendon was a year ago and what that offense was doing. Then thirdly, you got Joe. You're never going to hit all the deep balls, right? But he missed a couple Saturday. What's that conjure up reflections of?
Overthrow Joe.
The first time. You got the 2-point conversion. He doesn't force it in there, try to make a play. He runs out of bounds. A la Ole Miss, running out of bounds. Clock goes down. All those things gets conjured up, and the result of the conversation or the result of that thought process is Joe's the problem. Joe's not good enough. And that's the billing of being the starting quarterback at Tennessee, replacing a really good player. And not producing as much as you need to produce. Again, many problems this team has to fix beyond Joe Milton playing a little bit better than he played. Now, he was much better against Florida than he was against Austin Peay. He was not very good against Austin Peay. He was, as you said, Eric, he's way down the list of the issues that you've got going on with your offense right now. I don't know that anybody thinks Nico's ready anyway. That's not what any fan wants to hear. But Austin, that's where this thing, based on every comment, everybody you talk to privately, publicly, everywhere, that's where that one feels like it is right now.
Yeah, I don't know if he's ready or not. No one said he's not ready. To me, I just think it more boils down to they think they would be doing Nico a disservice to put him in. With where they're at offensively right now, they've got to get some things cured up around Joe, and go from there. I'll add in number 4 is for the fans. They watched 4 years, the Larry Scott year, and then the 3 years under Jeremy of just atrocious offensive football. And then all of a sudden they started scoring points. And now it feels like this year they're going back to not scoring as much and struggling to get the ball into the end zone. And I think fans are hitting a hardcore panic button because it's like, whoa, we had so much fun, even at 7-5 2 years ago, had so much fun, drilling South Carolina and drilling Missouri and all that, winning 45-42 in Lexington, but putting up points and doing so. And then, of course, last year was magical, right? But all of a sudden this year it feels like the offense is more back towards like struggling to get to 20 and 30. And it feels like, when you do score, you've moved heavens and earth to do so. Last year, it all just came so easy. And I think that's a panic, and I get it. I mean, again, you watch 4 years of just bad offensive football. I don't think they're going back in that type of direction, though.
And Hubbard, to add to your point, I think about how good Hendon was, making, just something happen when it all broke down. I think that just, highlights, kind of what Heupel's talking about with execution and having to clean things up, because the guys around Joe have to be better because a mistake is costly. And that's, not a knock on Joe, but he's just a different player than Hendon was and that kind of thing. So now you get if something breaks down, the play's over. Whereas last year, sometimes the fun had just begun.
Yeah.
When that happened.
Well, look, they were better on the offensive line a year ago. Okay, there's no doubt. You're playing with a top 10 tackle in Darnell Wright. You're playing with an NFL guy in Jerome Carvin. You had Cooper Mays out there. They were better. But Hendon could also fix the wrongs of an offensive lineman too, or if a running back missed a protection, or what I'm saying, he could get out of the way and create some things happening. I mean, I don't think South Carolina's offensive line is very good, but Spencer Rattler is helping them out because of the things he could do. That's just not Joe's game. So to your point, Rob, you're exactly right. Everybody around them has to ramp up their game in doing those things. I don't know that that's Nico's game either. Okay. So I don't know that that's just, you're suddenly putting in this dynamic athlete who's going to run for, be your second leading rusher, or your number one rusher in a game. I just think this is the adjustment and the change to the offense that comes with a different quarterback. To me, that's just kind of the reality of it.
And kind of on that note of guys around Joe getting better, and that's everybody. That's running backs, that's receivers, that's defense, of course. But specifically, this conversation is about the offensive line. The offensive line was not good on the road at Florida last weekend. Josh Heupel was asked about that, and then specifically about the crowd noise. You can't replicate that in practice. You just can't. But what are some things that you do to kind of work on that to make it a little bit easier when you're on the road? Here's what Josh Heupel said on those things on Monday's press conference.
They're just not as consistent as we need them to be. And that's really the entire offensive unit. I thought the wide receivers took a step in the right direction, from how they had performed the previous weeks. But collectively as a group, just not as consistent as you need to be to go on the road, to play a good team, and be able to move the football and ultimately score points. Like the self-inflicted wounds that goes into how you're scoring in the red zone too, and it's not a game of unlimited opportunities. You got to maximize them. You can't put yourself in 1st and 20 and try to play ball. We've done a lot of things. Need to ramp it up, I guess. And when I say I guess, meaning only intensify it. We got to be able to function better than we did. Part of that is the noise. Part of it's being able to reset from one play to the next. That's the hardest part to replicate during practice.
I mean, it's tough playing on the road. Nobody said it's easy to play on the road in this league, but you go back, you look at Georgia, at South Carolina, then at Florida this year. Of course, the two games I mentioned earlier, that was last year. Haven't handled the road very well, especially when it gets loud. It was loud at Florida the other night. It was very loud. It was deafening in Athens last year. And, it's tough to replicate that in practice like we just mentioned, like he just mentioned. But if you're the quarterback, Rob, it's just kind of one of those things that falls on you, right? I mean, you got to make sure that everybody can hear you, whatever you're doing. That's one of those things to where, sure, you have all these false start penalties, and I'm not saying that that's just straight Joe Milton's fault, but at the end of the day, you are the quarterback. It's part of your operation, and that's something Tennessee, that was one of the biggest disappointments about Saturday, is Tennessee just looked like a little league team out there at points and times.
Yeah, and I would also toss it. I would think that Cooper has an impact on that as well. His absence. I mean, and I agree with you, Eric. It's more the quarterback, but when you're talking about the procedures, pre-snap stuff, I think Cooper helps with that. And also, I don't know the answer to this. I just like to know your all's thoughts when we're talking about the road. The road games, the problems we've seen going back to last year. I wonder how much trying to play at that tempo influences that or has to do with it. I don't know if it does. Again, I don't know the answer. I just wonder what you guys think about it.
Well, I mean, I think clearly the noise makes it hard to change a play because you can't just whistle out there and get everybody's attention. And, when everybody looks over there and quickly sees the call and moves on, because clearly Joe is going up and down the sidelines to figure out kind of where they were and trying to make the adjustments and make the calls and all those types of things. I looked it up last year. They had 7 penalties for 60 yards at South Carolina. I don't know how many of those were offensive pre-snap penalties. I think part of your issue at Georgia last year too was the level of competition and the magnitude of the game you were in. That was a championship. That was for a championship type game. Austin, I think you're looking at this. Rob makes a good point. I mean, Ollie Lane never played center on the road. Crawford had played on the road in the SEC. Campbell has never played on the road in the SEC. Carrick never played on the road in the SEC. Spraggins has. Joe Milton never been in that environment in the SEC. He had 3 road starts as a quarterback and that was in a COVID year at Michigan. I think the noise shocked them. I mean, I think the noise startled them. It was a lot harder than they ever thought it would be. And Josh Heupel was kind of downplaying that noise a little bit last week when asked about it on Thursday. Like, yeah, we'll handle the noise fine. They clearly didn't. They were clearly bothered by it.
Bothered dramatically. And I do think Rob brings up a good point. And that's not to, you can just, that's not an excuse for them. But I think, when you've not done something before, it can be a real wake-up call. And, again, Ollie wasn't even playing center, 6 weeks ago. And, now he's Tennessee's center until Cooper comes back. And, again, I think they just have some major problems up front. The communication was bad across the board. It wasn't just one person. It wasn't just the left tackle jumping off sides because the one particular defensive end was, living in his head. This was, across the board. The group struggled, and I get CSW all put on the board, and they've only given up 3 sacks in 3 games, but sacks isn't a telltale. I mean, like, if you're affecting the play and causing the quarterback to be under duress, you cannot give up a sack and alter how the play happens.
Well, you would certainly wish they would have had 2 sacks on Saturday instead of Joe getting it out of his hands for a flutter. You'd rather have the sack there. I mean, I think you had a couple of things. There one time they had a snap infraction because Joe clapped, and the ball wasn't snapped, or that there was confusion on when to snap the ball there because they probably couldn't hear the clap. There was another one on rewatch that I looked at, Eric. Couric had his head turned to Joe, was looking at Joe when the ball was snapped.
Yep.
I mean, you're not going to get your head around and block the guy coming across from you when that happens. I mean, they were just
There's
all
another
out.
play. Sorry to cut you off. There's another play where J.J. Crawford's literally saying, "What's the play? What's the play?"
Yeah,
And Joe's telling him to get down.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
remember that one for sure. And then there's no bigger example. There's no finer example than burning those 2 timeouts in the first drive of the third quarter. Which, I mean, how big was that?
Yeah, I mean, they have got to address and look at their communication and how to improve that on the road moving forward, because it bothered them in Athens, Georgia a year ago. It had some effect on them in South Carolina. They still scored a good number of points in that game. They just couldn't stop anybody, and it had a real effect with them Saturday night for sure.
Well,
in Gainesville.
And unfortunately for Tennessee, Hubbard, they're at home basically the next month, and their next road game isn't kind of like a Missouri or a Kentucky that you can kind of, you hear it, but you don't hear it. Like, their hardest 2 road environments are their first 2 road environments. Mm-hmm. So they'll go to Alabama next, and that place will be, amped to try to, repeal last year's win. So, I mean, like, I don't know how you fix it,
Well, but I mean, here's the thing. I mean, you've got to work on your community. You whether your hand signals or what you're doing. I mean, you can't say, well, we're going to ease into a road game because we're playing at a place that's not very loud. That doesn't help you either. I mean, you can't say, well, we're a little bit better at it because we played at a mediocre loud place. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You got to go. You got to.
No, I'm just going off the standpoint of working on communication, having kind of like, I always use the pool example. Like, you get into the pool, into the shallow end at a Kentucky, Missouri, where you still have to, do those things and work on your communication, but it's not as overwhelming as Alabama, like the deep end. Now, I mean, I don't know what you guys think. What do you think about if they just literally worked on communication for the next 30 days? When they went to practice every day, they literally turned on the music like they were going on the road that week. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud of things they can do.
You certainly don't want to have to cross this bridge when you get there in a month and start preparing for Alabama, to your point. You don't want that to be the next time you work on it because you have all this time. But at the same time, still, there's so many different things you need to work on that you need to kind of focus on you before you focus on anything else, right? I mean, does that kind of make sense?
Well,
like, you're not going on the road for another month. So just focus on what you got to focus on, then kind of worry about the crowd noise and all that when the time comes. I don't know. I just kind of how I look at it, but certainly I think that they can start pumping in some more of that stuff over the next month and try to figure some things out.
Well, and I think at some point too, you kind of got to line up and go with it, right? I mean, I felt like at times they were trying to be too finite with a perfect call, right? Like they're at the line of scrimmage, they signal in the play, And then Florida jumps into something, and Joe puts his hands up and says, wait. They look over and they get something else. Florida moves again. Wait, let's get something else. I mean, you can't change the play with 8 seconds left on the play clock. It doesn't work that way. And that's what got them. That's what got them both times to start the second half. They were trying to audible inside 10 seconds on the play clock. You just can't do that. Sometimes you just kind of got to line up and go with what you got and not get caught in the cat and mouse game that I think they got caught up in a couple of times with offensive play calling.
We're going to continue this conversation, of course, continuing looking back at Tennessee and Florida, looking ahead to UTSA. Going to talk about this offensive line, all that and more right here on the Volquest podcast. But first, let's get a word from our proud sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions.
Nominate a family that you think is deserving of an exterior home makeover. A gift from your friends at Exterior Home Solutions.
Thank you so much to Exterior Home Solutions, making all this coverage possible right here on the Volquest podcast. Thank you guys for being here on a Tuesday. Let's continue back and talk about the offensive line. Joe Milton, of course, there's a situation there. Reported on Sunday that he was stopped and cited for simple possession. He was on the road. He did suit out. He was on field goal and PAT, but did not play on offense. Josh Heupel was asked about his offensive tackle, Gerald Mincey, that availability. That was at the Monday press conference. Here is that exchange, as he didn't really want to talk about it.
Just a couple questions on the Gerald Mincey situation. He didn't play on offense the other night. Was that punishment for the citation Thursday?
Yeah, we just decided not to play him on the offensive side of the ball.
And why did he play on special teams? But
Yeah, we just made that decision.
will he be available to play on Saturday?
Yeah, we got a long week here. We'll go through the week.
So clearly not wanting to discuss that. So Austin, when Gerald Mincey does get back there and he's playing more tackle, it's still going to, split timeshare over there, right tackle J.J. Crawford. But the struggles of the offensive line, is it as simple as getting Cooper back full-time, playing more Mincey? It won't be perfect, but should we see a better product on the offensive line?
I don't think any of us know.
Yeah.
Cooper's not played with this collaboration of offensive linemen. I think if this was last year's offensive line, the answer would be easily yes. But this is a different collaboration of linemen. He no longer has Carvin to his left. He's got Andre Keurig or whoever they have lining up there. The tackles are different. And so I just don't know. I don't think any of us know until Cooper gets back and is good to go.
And Rob, not to say that Gerald Mincey playing right tackle the other night would have fixed everything and Tennessee would have won, but J.J. Crawford, among other offensive linemen, just really struggled.
He struggled. And I know, we all have issues with Pro Football Focus from time to time. Sometimes the grades don't reflect what we think we see. But, I think that they reflect this week what we thought we saw from Mincey. He was far and away the lowest graded guy, from Crawford, from the lowest graded guy in pass protection. On the offensive line, the lowest graded guy, in run blocking, just a tough night for him. And again, Mincey's not, and I'm not saying he's an all SEC player by any stretch of the imagination, but in limited action so far this year, he's been the better guy. And it would have just been better to, have an option on Saturday night with the way Tennessee was struggling to run the football.
Well, it sounds like they had an option. They just didn't go.
Oh, there you go.
They didn't elect to choose that option for whatever the reason was. That whole narrative is a head scratcher. It just, Austin, you like to say 2 + 2 = 4. That answer isn't 2 + 2 = 4.
No, it's not.
Let's do it. And not the best moment in terms of explaining your decision making process and that ordeal there.
No, again, 2 is, he didn't play, and 2 is he was cited for simple possession of marijuana out past Thursday night curfew. That's 4. He did not play any offense. But I don't understand the logic and the reason. Just say, hey, look, we decided not to play him. Problem
violation of team rules.
They suspended him. They suspended him for offensive plays, but not for special teams.
It's a storyline that's there because of 2 snaps on special teams. It's a different story because of 2 snaps on special teams. It's not worth it. It just doesn't make any sense. If you wanted to suspend him, suspend him. Don't dress him. Don't play him. If you want to play him, You're the head coach. You could say, hey, we're handling that matter internally, and he played. But to play him 2 snaps and not try to help your offensive line out that's struggling, that doesn't something doesn't add up there. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't let me say I don't understand the reasoning. Let me preface it that way.
Because what it looks like from the outside is you took him just in case you absolutely had to play him at tackle. You know, say Campbell or Crawford goes down with injury. But the suspension was you're just not going to allow you to play offense. I mean, at that point in time, you have Dane Davis who's snapping the football a little bit. Like he's a tackle, and it's not like, oh, we're going to take him just in case we need him. Well, hell, you needed him. Offensive line sucked. Tennessee got whipped, and you still didn't play him. So it just looks really bizarre. It is what it is. We've talked a lot about offense. Question was asked Monday about Dylan Sampson. He was available, Josh Heupel says. Joshua Josephs did not see any action. That's kind of a head scratcher because of the rotation up front. Did Nico Slaughter, game time decision? We checked on that after the game, and he just wasn't able to go. Don't think that's going to be something like long term, but he was, he gave it a go in warm-ups. He was in pads and right there on the sideline. That's kind of why those guys didn't play. But defensively, Rob, liked a lot what you saw the first 2 weeks, knowing that Florida's a step up in competition and all that. Didn't get as much pressure on the quarterback. Linebackers, not a good day. The secondary missed 10 tackles. 10 of your 11 missed tackles came from the defensive secondary. Not a good day whatsoever for defense. And, I mean, I know I'm not breaking any news there.
Yeah, I mean, the tackling in the first half especially was just awful. On Etienne's big run, Walker and Haddon both just whiffed. I mean, Walker had a bad, missed him. I mean, good job at Etienne. And Haddon, I don't even know what that was. Just egregious. But I really surprised at how Florida was able to get push in the front seven. And, I don't even think the final numbers do it justice because, I mean, how much did they take their foot off the gas in the second half? I give Tennessee credit for the third quarter. I thought they came out. They were salty. They forced those 2 early 3-and-outs. But, man, I mean, Florida is just manhandled in the first half. 135 yards rushing, 281 total yards. And, scored touchdowns on 4 straight possessions there in the second quarter to take control of the game. And that really caught me off guard. One, I didn't think Florida was very good. And I still am not convinced that they're very good offensively. And two, I think we had all agreed, we didn't think Tennessee was the 1985 Bears, but we thought they were better on that side of the ball, especially in the front seven, especially in the pass rush. Now, I think Florida, game plan for that pass rush. I mean, they weren't holding the ball long. I think, Britt, you had the stat yesterday. Did he even throw 20 yards to the air? He did not. Did he? Burks didn't. So, I mean, I think Florida made a concerted effort to not let the pass rush get home and affect him. But just the way that, they were able to get 5-6 yards of carry and get critical first downs when they needed them. I was caught off guard by just how, wrong-footed, I guess, is a way to put Tennessee's defense looked in that first half.
Brett, they weren't asking Mertz to be Superman. They wanted him to be very pedestrian. He was very pedestrian, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. There was one third down play where he got out of the pocket, made a throw on the run, and got a first down. I thought that was a nice play. I'm not trying to take anything away from him because, again, he did exactly what Florida wanted him to do. But he didn't throw it 20 yards down the field. There was a lot of eye candy, moving guys around a lot, motion, man coverage, all that type of stuff. And Tennessee's linebackers, I think, struggle with that a little bit.
Well, I mean, look, here's where Tennessee's at moving forward, okay? Until they show they can handle the crossing intermediate stuff, the underneath stuff, until they can handle those crossers and pass coverage, everybody's going to throw them. South Carolina did it a year ago and caused Tennessee all kinds of problems. Florida took a lot of that game plan, did some things with that. They took some of the Austin Peay stuff, did some things with that. Tennessee's going to get tested, the line of scrimmage, 10 yards down the field. They're going to have to play better. Star position's got to play better. They're going to have to play better at linebacker and coverage. And then when the opportunity presents itself on third down, they got to get off the field. It's the story that was of a year ago. I mean, all we heard about is third and long, but you got to get off the field. In the first half, Florida converted 3 3rd-and-5s, I think a 3rd and 9 and a 3rd and 11. There was one third down conversion that was a 3rd and 1. It was 3rd and goal at the 1-yard line. Everything else that they converted, if I'm not mistaken, was 3rd and 5 or longer. So it's 3rd and medium or longer. You got to get off the field. And if that means you got to be more aggressive, Austin, I don't know what you've got to do, but you've got to find a way to get off the field when you've got a team in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11. Tennessee didn't do that in the second quarter, and the result is Florida kept the football and scored 20 points, and Tennessee got shut out.
Yeah, and all it does is keeps your defense out there longer. It keeps your offense off the field. Two things that I think hurt Tennessee in the long run, because again, you got a lot of guys out there playing a lot of snaps. It's hot, and then offensively, you're taking the ball out of the quarterback's hands, Tennessee's offense's hands, and the way the new clock rules are set up, the game's going to be shortened a little bit, and so you're going to lose a possession here or there when all that happens. So you're right, you've got to get off the field. I don't know if that is bringing pressure or what, but right now Tennessee's got to regroup this week and again see if they can figure some things out before South Carolina rolls into town. A South Carolina team that's plenty capable, having defensively been pretty salty up front, and offensively they've moved the ball a lot. Not scored a ton of points, but they've moved the ball a ton. And Rattler has picked up right where he left off at the end of last year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Here's the thing too, Rob. I don't have the ESPN analytics, what your percentages of winning and what your percentages of losing are, and all those things. And we can talk about the offense and not scoring more than 16 points, all those things. Josh Heupel's never won a game as a head coach where his team scored less than 30 points. I would venture to say, though, if you give up touchdowns on 4 consecutive possessions in the second quarter, you're not going to win a football game in this conference very often. Maybe you rally and beat somebody who's not very good, but you're not going to win a high-level football game where you give up 4 consecutive touchdowns on defense.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because this is no lie. I was watching SportsCenter as Scott Van Pelt was talking about the Cincinnati Bengals losing their first 2 games of the season, and then throwing up a graphic on, exactly how many times, teams don't make the playoffs under that, as I was writing the 3-2-1 and thought the exact same thing. What's the win probability when you give up 4 straight touchdowns in the second quarter? That's too funny. No, I had the precise same thought. I was like, man, I bet that's just about 0.
So, I mean, nothing's going to wash this bad taste out of your mouth if you're a Tennessee fan. I get this. If you're a player in that locker room, if you're a coach, I mean, that was bad. But knowing you're not going to get, with all due respect, UTSA, which, again, you can't just roll over. You got to show up, you got to play and everything. Even if you win, you go win that game by 30 points, Austin, it's going to be like, oh, it's just UTSA or whatever. Having said that, you need to see a lot. But what do you need to see from Tennessee this week? It's a new week. You want to snap and clear. I mean, what are some things that you got to see that you're going to, when you leave Neyland Stadium Saturday night, you're going to say, okay, well, at least that looked better. Let's see if it can translate to SEC play.
Yeah, you want to see them go out there and beat the hell out of them. Yeah. I mean, that's defensively, offensively, rallying to the football, no explosive plays on defense, offensively, more explosive plays. Better
get some turnovers defensively.
Yeah, forcing turnovers defensively, absolutely. Special teams, win that. I mean, the other night, the kicker and the punter, I thought, did a really good job, especially, you go like 2 weeks and everybody's like, oh, Jackson Ross is terrible. I mean, we get rid of him, send him back to Australia, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, he's just gotten better, as Heupel said he would after that first game. He's gotten better and handled everything down the swamp fairly well the other night. And, I just think you just want to come out and compete. Now, at the end of it, if you do what I just said, and you win big, everybody's going to go, well, it's UTSA. Well, but you're supposed to do that, right? Like, you'd rather do that than win 27-20 against UTSA. So, I mean, like,
you look like you did against Austin Peay or Alabama did in Tampa.
Yeah, you can just get some mojo going. Like it's like that. You see that 1 or 2 plays with a team occasionally, and all of a sudden, boom, here comes another one. Boom, here comes another one. Boom, here comes another one. Remember when Tennessee scored 38 unanswered against Florida in 2016? I mean, it was like one play after another on both sides of the ball. They were feeding off each other. And I'm not saying that's this game, but I mean, you need something similar. You need to feed off each other as a team.
Yeah, for me, there's 2 specific things, Eric. I mean, I agree with everything Austin say. You got to go win. But for me, one thing on each side of the ball. Offensively, play with some tempo. And look, if that means you don't audible as much, don't audible as much. But play fast, because that's such a part of what you do to wear people down. Get in that tempo and get going No, when you get in the red zone, don't slow it down like you did against Virginia and huddle up and figure out what you're doing. Keep playing fast would be the first thing for me offensively. Defensively, you got to show some growth in defending the middle of the field, because I'm telling you right now, everybody that they play is going to attack Tennessee in that 0 to 10 yard range until Tennessee shows they can defend that better. Those are my two specific things, Rob, when I look at this matchup and what Tennessee should try to get accomplished besides winning and winning big this week.
Yeah, I would say play clean. Because through 3 weeks they've got 24 penalties. Only Arkansas in the league's been worse. You probably not going to probably won't cost you this game, but you got to start developing some good habits that way, and just find some. I think Austin said. Find some mojo. Get this at no point in time in these 3 games has it felt like it felt last year, and that's not on all on Joe Milton. I'm just talking about like you're talking about, Hubbard, the tempo, moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, getting defenses on their heels, making consecutive chunk plays, having a couple of 2 and 3 minute touchdown drives strung together. That just that fast break offense has not been there this year, and I think that's so much a part of an identity of the program. With the way Heupel plays football, it just feels like they kind of like AP said, they've lost their mojo right now.
85
like
offensive
Austin
snaps.
Powers, baby. Like Austin Powers, they lost his mojo.
85 offensive snaps in the win over Virginia. 65 in the lackluster performance against Austin Peay. 63 plays against Florida. I couldn't agree more. You got to get back to running some plays and playing more of this Heupel brand of offense.
You can't get behind the sticks, okay? That slows everything down. You get that, which goes to what Rob's saying. To do that, you've got to play clean. They've got to play clean, and then they've just got to go. Just hair on fire. Let's go. If it's a bad play, line up and run another one. Just go faster than they're going right now.
Yeah, and that's something Heupel mentioned several times on Monday. It's leave the last play there. Like, move on. Don't. If you're a quarterback, that's like, if you're a quarterback or a cornerback, that is so important to remember for anybody, but those 2 positions for sure. Same with the Tennessee offense. One thing I'm looking forward to, and again, we'll talk UTSA as the rest of the week goes on. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I'm looking at the stats right now. Tennessee's got 1 fumble recovery. That came off a punt. Tennessee has 1 interception. That was Kamal Haddon, and that was against Austin Peay. I want to see this defense force some turnovers and give some possession backs to the offense. That's just something we haven't seen through 3 weeks, even when the pressure was really good in weeks 1 and 2. So that's something I'm looking forward to. It is going to be a big week for Tennessee, trying to get back on track with UTSA coming in to Neyland Stadium Saturday for the 4 o'clock Eastern time kick. We'll see if this offense looks more like a Josh Heupel offense. We'll see if this defense can respond, and we'll see if Tennessee can indeed beat the heck out of the opponent before getting back into Southeastern Conference play. That's on the docket for Saturday. We'll continue to preview that matchup and look back a little bit to the Florida loss all week long over at Volquest.com. Big thanks to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. As always, if you have a need for siding, windows, garage, you can contact Exterior Home Solutions today. Roofing as well. They've been local and trusted since 1999. Give them a call today for a free estimate. That's at 865-524-5888, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, I am Eric Kane. Thank you so much for being here and listening to the Volquest Podcast.